Ambassador Jiho Kim felt his hand shake as he adjusted his formal diplomatic robes. The transport ship carrying him was getting closer to the massive space station where the Galactic Council met. This wasn't a normal meeting. He had received an emergency message just 6 hours ago, and now he was being rushed to face every single alien species in the galaxy. The message had been short and terrifying. All 847 member species of the Galactic Council wanted to see him immediately. In his 15 years as Earth's ambassador, Jiho had never seen anything like this. Usually, only a few dozen species showed up to regular meetings. Most of them spent their time arguing with each other about trade routes and mining rights. But today was different. Today, every single alien race had dropped everything to be here. As his transport docked, Jiho could see the massive crystalline chamber through the viewport. The space station itself was the size of a small moon, built from some kind of living crystal that grew naturally in the Andromeda system. The chamber could hold millions of beings, and today it looked like it was going to need every bit of that space. Walking through the entrance corridors, Jiho noticed something strange. The usual chatter and noise from different alien species was missing. Instead, there was an uncomfortable silence. Security guards from various species lined the hallways, their weapons clearly visible. Some of the guards looked nervous, others looked angry. When the massive doors to the main chamber opened, Jiho stopped breathing for a moment. He had never seen anything like it. The chamber stretched out in front of him like a vast canyon made of sparkling crystal. Thousands upon thousands of alien beings filled every available space. Some hung from the ceiling with their wing-like appendages, others floated in specialized breathing tanks. The insect-like species created living towers by climbing on top of each other. All of them were looking at him. Jiho walked slowly down the central pathway toward the speaking platform. His footsteps echoed loudly in the silent chamber. He could feel countless eyes, sensors, and other alien sensing organs tracking his every movement. Some species communicated through color changes, and he could see waves of red and orange rippling through their sections. He didn't need a translator to know those colors meant anger and fear. At the center of the chamber stood the Zephyrian Chancellor, Veltar. The Zephyrians were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They looked somewhat like humans, but their skin was blue, and they had 4 arms. Chancellor Veltar had been leading galactic politics for over 300 years. Jiho had met him many times before, and the Chancellor had always been polite, even friendly. Today there was no friendliness in his 4 eyes. "Human delegate!" Chancellor Veltar's voice boomed through the chamber without any need for amplification. The Zephyrians had natural voice projection that could be heard across vast distances. "You will explain your species' recent activities in the Outer Rim territories." Behind Jiho, massive holographic displays came to life. The images showed star maps of the galaxy's edge, where space was mostly empty and dangerous. Dozens of red dots marked new human colonies scattered across, systems that most species considered worthless. These were places with dying stars, unstable planets, or dangerous radiation fields. These systems, the Chancellor continued, his voice getting louder, hold no strategic value. They have no valuable minerals, no habitable worlds worth the cost of terraforming, and no tactical advantages. Yet your colonies appear there overnight as if by magic. Your people arrive in massive numbers with equipment and supplies that must cost your entire planet's economy. Jiho felt sweat forming on his forehead despite the cool temperature in the chamber. He had been briefed about the colonies, but Earth's government had told him they were simple research outposts. Looking at the holographic display, he could see that wasn't true. These weren't small research stations. They were massive settlements, with millions of humans each. The strangest part was their locations. The colonies seemed randomly scattered across the galaxy's edge with no pattern that made sense. Some were thousands of light years apart from each other. Others were clustered in small groups around areas of space that seemed completely empty. Furthermore, Chancellor Veltar continued, your species has been purchasing massive quantities of quantum drilling equipment, reality stabilizers, and deep space sensor arrays. These are not tools for normal colonization. These are tools for... He paused, and his 4 eyes seemed to glow brighter. For something else entirely. The chamber erupted in sounds from hundreds of different species. Some were growling, others were making high-pitched whistles, and the insect species were creating a buzzing noise that made Jiho's teeth hurt. It took several minutes for the Chancellor to restore order. Jiho knew he was in serious trouble, but he honestly didn't know what to tell them. Earth's government had classified most information about the Outer Rim colonies. He was supposed to be the ambassador, but apparently his own government had been keeping secrets from him too. The silence in the chamber was broken by a crackling sound as a quantum communication link activated. A holographic image appeared in the center of the room, showing a young human man covered in dirt and sweat. His name was Minho Park, and Jiho recognized him as one of Earth's leading archaeologists. Ambassador Kim. Minho's voice was shaking badly. I'm calling from the dig site on Kepler 442b. You need to see what we've found. Behind him, other human workers were running around frantically, carrying strange artifacts and looking terrified. The hologram shifted to show what looked like the entrance to an enormous underground structure. The walls were made of some kind of black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered every surface, and they seemed to move slightly when you looked directly at them. These structures, Minho continued, his voice getting higher with each word, they're not human, but they're not from any known alien species either. We've run every test we can think of. The dating results are impossible. This site is at least 50,000 years old. A wave of shocked sounds rippled through the chamber. 50,000 years ago was before any of the current galactic civilizations had even developed space travel. Most species had barely discovered fire at that time. That's not possible, shouted a delegate from the Crystalline Confederacy. Their species looked like living glass sculptures, and when they spoke, their bodies chimed like bells. Our historical records go back 70,000 years. There were no advanced civilizations in this galaxy before us. But Minho wasn't finished. There's more. We've found similar structures on every single human colony world, every single one. And they're all connected by some kind of underground network that we can't even begin to understand. In the floating section reserved for the ethereal collective, something extraordinary began to happen. The ethereals were beings of pure energy, who rarely interacted with physical species. They claimed to be the memory keepers of the galaxy, storing knowledge that went back to the beginning of time. Now, their usually calm energy fields were swirling with bright colors that hurt to look at. The lead ethereal, who called herself Keeper Zana, began to speak. Her voice sounded like it was coming from inside everyone's head at the same time. The archives, the sealed archives, they must be opened. Ancient storage devices that hadn't been activated in thousands of years began to power up around the chamber. These weren't normal computers or data storage systems. They were quantum memory banks that could store the experiences and memories of entire civilizations. As the systems came online, holographic images began to fill the air above the delegates. At first, they were just flashes of light and color. But slowly they began to form recognizable shapes. Star maps, battle formations, and scenes of warfare on a scale that made even the most violent species in the chamber step back in fear. The insectoid hive queens, who normally sat quietly in their corner of the chamber, suddenly began making loud chittering sounds. Their antennae were twitching wildly, and they were communicating with each other in rapid bursts of pheromones that filled their section with colorful clouds. The genetic memories, Queen Nexus clicked out in her mechanical-sounding voice. Something is stirring the genetic memories. Our ancestors knew of something terrible. The holographic star maps became clearer and more detailed. They showed the galaxy as it had been 50,000 years ago, but it looked different somehow. There were fewer stars, and vast sections of space appeared to be completely empty, as if something had consumed entire star systems. But the most shocking thing was the battle sites marked on these ancient maps. Dozens of locations were highlighted in bright red, showing where enormous conflicts had taken place. The maps called it the Void War, a name that most species had heard in old stories but dismissed as mythology. Jiho felt his stomach drop as he compared the ancient battle sites to the locations of the new human colonies. They matched perfectly. Every single human settlement had been built exactly on top of an ancient battlefield from the Void War. "This can't be a coincidence," he whispered, but his voice was picked up by the chamber's audio systems and broadcast to everyone. Chancellor Veltar's 4 eyes were now glowing so brightly they were painful to look at. "Human delegate, your species has somehow found every single site where the legendary Guardians made their final stand against the Void entities. The question is, how did you know where to look?" The ancient holograms continued to play, showing scenes of warriors in advanced armor fighting against things that looked like tears in reality itself. The warriors were humanoid, but their faces were hidden behind helmets that looked disturbingly familiar to anyone who had seen modern human military equipment. Jiho realized with growing horror that his people weren't just randomly colonizing worthless systems. They were unconsciously returning to places where humanity's ancestors had fought and died in a war that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Back on Earth, Dr. Sujin Lee was having the worst day of her career. She had been working in her genetics laboratory when the emergency call came in from the Galactic Council. Her hands were still covered in lab equipment as she frantically pulled up her research files on the secure government network. "Ambassador Kim?" Her voice cracked as she spoke through the quantum communication link. "What I'm about to tell you is going to sound completely insane. We've been studying human DNA for a new medical project, trying to understand why humans adapt so quickly to different planetary environments." The massive chamber fell silent as Dr. Lee's holographic image appeared next to the ancient battle maps. She looked exhausted and frightened, her usually neat hair falling in messy strands around her face. "We found something that shouldn't exist. Hidden in what we thought was junk DNA, we discovered complex information patterns. At first, we thought they were just random genetic noise, but when we ran them through our quantum computers, they turned out to be memories. Actual memories stored in our genetic code." Jiho felt a strange tingling sensation in his head as his neural implant automatically connected to Earth's classified database. The implant was standard equipment for all human diplomats, allowing them to access information instantly during negotiations. But as the connection established, something went wrong. Instead of just accessing Dr. Lee's research files, the implant seemed to unlock something else entirely. Jiho's vision went white, and suddenly he wasn't standing in the Galactic Council chamber anymore. He was somewhere else. Someone else. He was standing on the bridge of a massive starship unlike anything humans had ever built. The walls were made of the same black metal they had found on the colony worlds, but here it was alive, pulsing with energy that responded to his thoughts. Through the viewports, he could see a battle raging across an entire star system. Ships, the size of moons, were firing weapons that could crack planets in half, but they weren't fighting other ships. They were fighting against tears in space itself, dark wounds in reality that seemed to devour everything they touched. And leading the defense were warriors in advanced armor that looked almost human, but not quite. The vision shifted and Jiho found himself inside one of the massive facilities he had seen in Dr. Lee's archaeological reports. But this time, it was active and operational. Enormous machines were building stars from raw matter, crafting weapons that could reshape reality, and maintaining barriers that held back something so terrible that even looking at it through genetic memory made him want to scream. Then he heard the voices of the Guardians speaking in a language that sounded like ancient Korean, mixed with words that had no translation in any modern tongue. They were preparing for a final battle, knowing they would not survive but determined to lock away the void entities forever. The vision ended abruptly, and Jiho found himself back in the council chamber. He was on his knees, and he realized he had been screaming. Every alien species in the chamber was staring at him with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. "The memories," he gasped, struggling to stand up. "They're all there. Everything our ancestors knew. Everything they experienced. It's been sleeping in our DNA for 50,000 years. Dr. Lee's hologram flickered as she pulled up more data. "Ambassador, we've tested over 10,000 humans in the past week. Every single person carries these genetic memories, but they're locked away, dormant. Most people never access them consciously. They just feel urges, instincts to go to certain places, to build certain things." Chancellor Veltar leaned forward, his forearms crossed in what Jiho recognized as a gesture of deep concern among his species. You're saying that your colonists aren't choosing these locations consciously? That's exactly what I'm saying, Jiho replied, his voice stronger now as the full implications became clear. Humans have been feeling drawn to these places without understanding why. The genetic programming is so strong that entire families have sold everything they own to join colony ships heading to systems they'd never heard of before. The Ethereal Keeper. Xana's energy field pulsed with new patterns. The Guardians. We remember them now. They were the last line of defense against the void entities. When the final battle was lost, they used technology we can barely comprehend to lock the entities away in dark space between dimensions. But they knew the seals wouldn't last forever, Jiho continued, more memories surfacing as he spoke. So they encoded instructions into their DNA, passed down through their descendants. When the seals began to weaken, their children would return, to maintain them, even if they didn't remember why. The insectoid Queen Nexus made a sound like grinding metal. Your species isn't expanding into the galaxy. You're responding to an ancient emergency protocol. The seals are failing and your genetic programming is trying to fix them. A new holographic display activated, showing deep space sensor readings from the human colonies. The data was terrifying. Around each settlement, space itself seemed to be thin. Reality was weaker there, as if something on the other side was pressing against the barriers that kept it contained. We aren't a young species that just discovered space travel, Jiho said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber with new authority. Humans are the descendants of the galaxy's greatest protectors. We're the children of the Guardians, and we're unconsciously trying to do the job our ancestors died for. The revelation hit the assembled species like a physical blow. Everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong. The species they had seen as newcomers and potential threats were actually the inheritors of the galaxy's most ancient and sacred duty. Commander Hyunwoo Choi had been staring at his monitoring screens for 3 straight days, and he was starting to think he was losing his mind. His deep space observation station was positioned at the edge of the galaxy, where he spent most of his time tracking asteroid movements and checking for any unusual cosmic events. But what he was seeing now wasn't unusual. It was impossible. Control, this is Station Echo 7. He spoke into his communication device, trying to keep his voice steady. I need you to confirm something for me. According to my instruments, the Kepler 1649 system just disappeared. The voice that came back from Earth's Space Command sounded tired and frustrated. Commander Choi, we've been getting reports like this from 12 different monitoring stations. Run your diagnostics again. Your equipment must be malfunctioning. Hyunwoo had already run diagnostics 17 times. His equipment was working perfectly. The problem was that stars were vanishing from existence and nobody wanted to believe it. He pulled up the recording from 6 hours ago. The Kepler 1649 system had been there, clearly visible on all sensors. It had 3 planets, 2 asteroid belts, and a stable yellow star that had been burning for billions of years. Then, between one sensor sweep and the next, everything was gone. Not destroyed, not collapsed into a black hole, just gone. There was empty space where an entire star system used to be. Control, he tried again. I'm sending you the visual recordings. You need to see this. While he was uploading the data, his proximity alarm started screaming. Another system was disappearing, this one much closer to his station. Hyunwoo watched in horror as the stars of the Gliese 667 system began to fade, like someone was turning down their brightness. Within minutes, they were completely gone. His hands were shaking as he activated the emergency communication link to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kim needed to know about this immediately. Back in the council chamber, Jiho was still recovering from the genetic memory episode when Hyunwoo's terrified voice filled the room through the quantum link. Ambassador, sir, I don't know how to explain this, but entire star systems are disappearing. Not exploding, not being destroyed, they're just ceasing to exist. It's like something is erasing them from reality. The chamber erupted in panic as delegates from hundreds of species began shouting and demanding answers. Some of the more nervous species were already heading for the exits, preparing to flee back to their homeworlds. Jiho felt another wave of genetic memories wash over him, and this time he understood what was happening. "The seals," he said quietly, then louder as the realization hit him. "The quantum seals are failing." Chancellor Veltar used his natural voice amplification to restore order. "Explain these seals, human delegate." 50,000 years ago, our ancestors built quantum barriers to lock away the void entities in dark space between dimensions. But these barriers weren't meant to run automatically forever. They need conscious maintenance, constant attention, from beings who understand how they work. Dr. Lee's voice came through the communication link from Earth, and she sounded like she was crying. "Ambassador, we've been analyzing the genetic memories you unlocked. The seals were designed to be maintained by the Guardians themselves. When they all died in the final battle, they programmed their descendants to take over. But the knowledge was supposed to be passed down actively, not just stored in dormant DNA." Commander Choi's voice interrupted with new urgency. "Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies near 17 different human colonies. Space itself is becoming unstable in those areas." The ethereal keeper. Xana's energy field turned dark red, a color that none of the other species had ever seen before. The void entities. They exist outside of normal reality. When they break through, they don't just destroy matter and energy. They erase the very concept that those things ever existed. Queen Nexus of the insectoid hive made rapid clicking sounds that her translator rendered as panicked chittering. "Our ancestral memories are awakening. We remember now. The void entities don't just consume. They make it so that what they consume never was. History itself changes around them." Jiho accessed more of his genetic memories, and the full horror of the situation became clear. The seals aren't just failing randomly. They're being attacked from the other side. The void entities have been working for 50,000 years to break free, and they're finally succeeding. New data started flowing in from human colonies across the galaxy. Seismic sensors were detecting vibrations that seemed to come from outside normal space-time. Quantum field generators that the colonists had installed were activating on their own, as if trying to reinforce something that was breaking down. "How many systems have we lost?" Jiho asked, dreading the answer. Commander Choi's voice was barely a whisper. 23 now, sir, and the rate is accelerating. At this pace, we'll lose 100 systems in the next few hours." The genetic memories showed Jiho exactly what would happen if the seals completely failed. The void entities wouldn't just destroy the galaxy, they would make it so the galaxy had never existed in the first place. Every species, every world, every moment of history would be erased from reality itself. "We need to get to the colony worlds immediately," Jiho announced to the council. "The human colonists don't consciously know how to maintain the seals, but their genetic programming is trying to activate. If we can help them unlock their ancestral memories, we might be able to stop this." But even as he spoke, he could see the doubt in the alien delegate's eyes. How could a species that had forgotten its own history possibly save the galaxy from entities that their ancestors had barely managed to defeat at the height of their power? Time was running out, and reality itself was beginning to unravel at the edges of known space. Jiho stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, feeling the weight of 50,000 years of history pressing down on him. Around him, delegates from hundreds of species were shouting in panic as more reports came in about disappearing star systems. The number had reached 37, and the rate of destruction was getting faster every hour. But deep in his genetic memories, Jiho could see something that gave him hope. There was a protocol, a final emergency system that his ancestors had built into human DNA. It was dangerous, maybe even suicidal, but it was their only chance. "Dr. Lee," he called out through the communication link, "I need you to access the deepest level of the genetic archives. Look for something called the Awakening Protocol." Dr. Lee's image flickered as she worked frantically at her computer terminal on Earth. "I'm seeing it now, Ambassador. But the warnings. Jiho, this protocol was never meant to be used. According to these files, it will permanently change every human in the galaxy." "Change them how?" Chancellor Veltar demanded, his 4 eyes glowing with intensity. Jiho closed his eyes and let the genetic memories flow through him completely. The truth was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. It will wake up all the dormant guardian programming in human DNA. Every human alive will suddenly remember their true heritage and purpose, but once it's activated, there's no going back. We'll become something different than what we are now. Commander Choi's voice crackled through the speakers with desperate urgency. Sir, we've lost 42 systems now. Whatever you're going to do, please do it fast. The decision felt like jumping off a cliff, but Jiho knew there was no other choice. He placed his hand on the quantum communication console and accessed the deepest levels of his neural implant. Somewhere in his DNA was a beacon that had been waiting 50,000 years to be activated. Forgive me, he whispered, then spoke louder to address the entire council. I'm activating the awakening protocol. Every human in the galaxy is about to remember who we really are. The activation felt like lightning running through his entire body. The beacon in his DNA sent out a quantum signal that traveled faster than light, reaching every human colony, every human ship, and every human settlement across the galaxy simultaneously. On the mining colony of Kepler 438b, Yuna Shin was in the middle of arguing with her engineering team about why their equipment kept activating on its own. She was a tough woman who had spent 15 years managing difficult colonial operations, and she didn't believe in mysteries or magic. Then the signal hit her. Suddenly, Yuna wasn't just a colonial administrator anymore. She was guardian engineer, Yuna Shin, inheritor of technologies that could reshape reality itself. The mining equipment around her wasn't malfunctioning. It was trying to build quantum stabilizers that her people desperately needed. Everyone stop what you're doing, she commanded, her voice carrying a new authority that made her workers immediately obey. We have work to do, real work. Similar scenes were happening on thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Human colonists, who had been struggling to understand their strange urges to build certain structures, suddenly knew exactly what they were supposed to be doing. Farmers became guardian technicians. Teachers became guardian scientists. Children as young as 10 years old began helping their parents operate machinery that was beyond the understanding of most galactic civilizations. Back in the council chamber, Jiho felt the change happening to himself as well. His diplomatic training was still there, but it was now combined with 50,000 years of guardian knowledge and experience. He understood weapons that could crack reality in half, defensive systems that could protect entire star systems, and the true nature of the void entities that threatened everything. Within 6 hours, the human colonies had transformed completely. Simple settlements became massive fortress worlds bristling with quantum weapons and reality stabilizers. The ancient underground facilities that archaeologists had discovered were now fully operational, their dark metal walls pulsing with energy that pushed back against the spreading darkness. Commander Choi's voice came through the speakers again, but this time he sounded amazed rather than terrified. Ambassador, the disappearances have stopped. Whatever you did, it's working. But Jiho knew the full cost of what they had done. The awakened humans were no longer quite the same species they had been before. They were something more powerful, but also more isolated. The genetic programming that had made them guardian protectors also made it impossible for them to live normal lives among other species. Chancellor Veltar, Jiho said, turning to address the Zephyrian leader. His voice was different now, carrying the authority of countless generations of guardians. Humanity accepts its ancient responsibility. We will maintain the quantum seals and protect the galaxy from the void entities. The relief in the chamber was obvious, but Jiho wasn't finished. However, this means that humans can no longer be part of galactic civilization in the way we were before. The Guardian programming requires us to focus completely on our duty. We will have to withdraw to the edge of the galaxy, maintaining our watch from the boundary between normal space and the void. Queen Nexus made soft clicking sounds that translated as sadness. You're sacrificing your future as a galactic species to save all of us. Jiho nodded slowly. Our ancestors made the same choice 50,000 years ago. Now it's our turn. The galaxy will be safe, But humanity must stand alone at the edge of forever, keeping watch against the darkness between the stars. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the full implications sank in. Humanity had saved them all, but the price was eternal isolation, forever standing guard against threats that other species would never even know existed.